الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. My dear respected brothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, young friends, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Prophet ﷺ once in the summary of a hadith, he said that on the day of judgment, that no one will be allowed to move from where they are resurrected until they answer 4 questions. How did they spend their life? 2, how did they spend their youth when they were at their peak, their physical and mental peak? 3, how did they acquire and spend their wealth? And finally, how much ilm did they acquire? How much knowledge did they acquire? And then how much of that knowledge did they practice on? Abu Darda radiallahu anh, he was sent by Umar radiallahu anh to teach the people of Sham, to teach the people of Syria their religion. And he established the madrasa in Damascus. And there he had over 4,000 students. And he used to say that regarding this hadith, that of those 4 questions that we will be asked about, the one that concerns me the most, he used to say, is the 4th one. How much ilm did you acquire, and how much of that did you practice on? So as a society at large, we all make efforts for our education, for ourselves, for our children, for our families. And we strive to ensure that our children are educated well, that they go to the best schools, that they learn from the best teachers, that they have all the books and the supplies that they need. It's something that we work hard at. And it's a need that we have. It's a physical need that we have of this life, that we need to work hard, that we need to educate ourselves so that we can acquire from the dunya for us to spend in the dunya. And as men, specifically for the men here, it's an obligation on us that we must provide for our families. So when we do that with the correct intention, when a person with the correct intention acquires the knowledge of this world and acquires livelihood from that knowledge, we are rewarded for those actions, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. But at the end of our day, a vast majority of our education, kindergarten through 12th grade, through high school, whether it's an undergraduate degree, whether it's a graduate or a professional degree, whether it's trade school, whatever it is, all of this is for our needs and for our desires in this life. And when we do it with the correct intention, again, like I said, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, we're rewarded for it. When we do it without any intention, there's no reward for it. So first and foremost, a reminder to myself that when we go for work every day, whatever we do with the intention that, Ya Allah, I'm going to earn halal and tayyib rizq for my family, so Ya Allah, bless me in it and reward me for it. But all of that we do is for this dunya, it's temporary. But when it comes to the akhirah, when it comes to that which is permanent, What do we put forth for that? How much effort do we put towards gaining knowledge for it? How much do we know? How much do we teach our children about the purpose of our existence in this world? Can I ask you to put away your phone, please? How much of it do we put away for what is coming tomorrow? How much do we teach our children about the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How much do we teach our children about the purpose of our creation, about the purpose of our existence in this world? How much do we teach them about what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we can work towards those things? And how much do we teach them about what displeases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so we can stay away from those things? Seeking out a livelihood, seeking out a sustenance is a necessity of life. But what is the purpose of our life? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, we all know this ayah in the Quran in translation, that we have not created mankind and jinn except to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So to learn about that worship, to learn about what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is the ilm, that is the knowledge of religion. And throughout the Quran, throughout the Sunnah, we see the virtues of seeking knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being repeated to us again and again and again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Fatir, إِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ, that indeed only His knowledgeable servants fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's an unfortunate reality that sometimes those people who dedicate themselves to seeking out a certain field of knowledge in this world, many times they're at the top of their field, they're at the top of their science, but despite that they deny the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He says ulama, He is not referring to the scholars of the worldly sciences, rather He's referring to the scholars of the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala elevates the status of those with ilm on the Day of Judgment. In Surah Zumar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says again in translation that, say, can those who have knowledge and those who do not have knowledge ever be equal in rank? And there are whole chapters in the books of hadith dedicated to the virtues of seeking ilm. The Prophet ﷺ said once again in the summary of a hadith, that's the superiority of the one who is blessed with knowledge over the worshipper. So the alim versus the abid, the person who has knowledge versus the person who just worships. Again, we're not talking about a sinner, we're not talking about a fasiq, a zalim, we're talking about an abid. So the Prophet ﷺ said that the superiority of the one who has knowledge over the one who is just a worshipper is like my superiority over the least amongst you. And he was talking about the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. So again, the Prophet ﷺ is comparing the person who has knowledge, who has spent his life seeking knowledge, to the regular Muslim who does all those acts, not a transgressing Muslim, to the comparison between him sallallahu alaihi wasallam and one of the Sahaba Ikram radiallahu ta'ala an. And we know that there was no one better, that we know that the best of creation was the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that vast gap between a companion and him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he reiterates to us that is the difference between the person who has knowledge versus the person who just worships. And in another hadith, he said that the superiority of the alim over the abid is like the superiority of the full moon over the stars. So seeking knowledge is not a mundane task. It's not a symbol of failure. It's not that I go up to someone and says, oh, your son, he couldn't be successful at anything else, so you sent him to go study Islam. Absolutely not. Rather, I want my son to inherit something that I cannot give him. I want to give him the inheritance of the prophets alayhim as-salam. And the Prophet ﷺ said that the scholars are the inheritors of the prophets. Their inheritance was not gold or silver, rather it was knowledge, it was ilm. So whoever acquires it has acquired a large share of goodness. And at another time the Prophet ﷺ said, and again in translation, that whoever finds death while he is engaged in seeking ilm to revive Islam in the world, between him and the prophets is one level in paradise. So the prophets ﷺ, they obviously have the highest level in paradise. The Prophet ﷺ has told us that if we want to attain that second level, that level right underneath them, that if we are studying ilm and that we die in that path, that is the level that we have been promised. We ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us all amongst those who are in that level of paradise. Allahumma ameen. So seeking ilm, it's better than even performing those voluntary actions. The Prophet ﷺ said that learning one ayah of the Quran is better than performing 100 rak'ah, 100 nafil rak'ah. And learning one chapter, one bab of ilm is better than 1,000 nafil rak'ah. So he's comparing acts of worship to acquiring knowledge. And he's telling us that worshipping draws one person nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that when someone acquires knowledge, he benefits not only himself, he benefits those around him. She benefits her family, she benefits her community. So worshipping benefits oneself, acquiring knowledge, seeking ilm benefits humanity. Now, seeking knowledge is not only rewarding, and it not only elevates one's status on the Day of Judgment and in the next life, but it's also an obligation on every single Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ once said, طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ فَرِيضَةٌ عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ أَوْ كَمَا قَالَ عَلَيْهِ الصَّلَاةُ وَالسَّلَامُ رَوَاهُ Ibn Majah. That the Prophet ﷺ once said, to the closest meaning, that seeking knowledge is mandatory on every single Muslim, on every single Muslim man, every single Muslim woman. That it is a fard ayn. But if we dive into it, there are two parts. There's one part that is obligatory on every single Muslim, the fard ayns. How do I pray? What times do I need to pray? How do I cleanse myself for salah? How do I recite the book of Allah? What do I need to do when I go for hajj? Things like these are individual forms of knowledge that we all need to have. And then on the other side, there's that fard that's on the entire ummah or the entire community as a whole. There was fard kafaya. Those things like knowing the tafsir of the Quran, knowing the ahadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's not obligatory in every single one of us to know the tafsir of every single ayah, to know every single hadith, but it's obligatory on some people from our community to know those things. And the status of those who seek knowledge, I think it was made clear in the incident or at the time of the Battle of Tabuk. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this in Surah Tawbah. It's a story most of us know, that there were three companions who stayed back. They didn't have an excuse. Ka'ab ibn Malik, Murara ibn al-Rabi' and Hilal ibn Umayyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. And we know the social boycott they incurred for 40 days, the stern reprimand that they endured from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for staying back from jihad without an excuse, without a valid excuse. So there was a severe emphasis on joining the Prophet ﷺ whenever he went out to fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But there were exceptions made for people who could stay back. What were those exceptions? It wasn't for people that had a harvest they had worked on all year, that they were going to lose that harvest if they left for an expedition with the Prophet ﷺ. That was not a valid excuse. Staying back to take care of businesses was not a valid excuse. Staying back to take care of family was not a valid excuse in all situations. But there was a special exception that was made for those who stayed back to acquire the knowledge of ilm, to acquire the knowledge of deen. And in Surah Tawbah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there are those people who stay back and they seek knowledge, and that when the large group returns, that they teach those people who are gone, they teach them the ilm that they had acquired in that time. So that is the station of those who seek ilm. And I want to wrap up with the example of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. Some people asked him radiallahu anhu that you have narrated more hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam than any of the other companions. That's despite the fact that you accepted Islam in the 7th year after the Hijrah. Meaning he had approximately 2 years to learn from the Prophet ﷺ before his mission ended. They say that the mission of the Prophet ﷺ was for 23 years. 13 years in Mecca, 10 years in Medina. You were there for 2 of them, but you narrated more hadith than anyone else. How is that? Why is that? So he said that my muhajir friends, my friends who were the immigrants, that they were busy in their business and their trade. And my Ansar friends, the companion, the helpers who were there in Medina, those friends of mine, they were busy with their orchard and their date trees. But I, Abu Hurairah is saying, I was dedicated to learning from the Prophet ﷺ. He says that I was there at the Sufa, I was there at the bench, I was constantly in the masjid learning from the Prophet ﷺ. And he says that because of this, even though he spent a fraction of the time with the Prophet ﷺ, compared to other great companions that we know, Abu Bakr, Umar, Khadija, Aisha, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, he narrated more than all of them. And it's a comparison that we can see in our own lives. Many of us, alhamdulillah, were born into Muslim families. But there are those amongst us, mashallah, who were not born into Muslim families, but they were guided. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guided them to the truth. And we see many times that they exceed us in ilm. They exceed us in the knowledge of our deen, even though we, those of us who were born into Islam, were born into it. So something to reflect on, something to think about. A final reminder, it's very easy to lose track of the calendar. I do it all the time. So I saw my phone this morning, so I thought I'd share this reminder with everyone else, that we are approximately 4.5 months from the blessed month of Ramadan, that the companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, after Ramadan, they would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 6 months to allow them to reach, to accept the Ramadan, and within the 6 months of the coming Ramadan, they would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to ask them to reach Ramadan. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allow us to be amongst those who seek knowledge, amongst those who die while we are seeking knowledge, and we ask that He makes us amongst those who are able to witness the blessed month of Ramadan in a state where we are healthy, in a state where we are able to fast. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون جهنم داخرين بارك الله لنا ولكم في القرآن العظيم ونفعنا وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم أستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين من كل ذنب فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله. قال النبي قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في القرآن الكريم بعد نعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد عبدك ورسولك وصل على المؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وبارك على محمد وأزواجه وذريته. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون فاذكروني أذكركم واشكروني ولا تكفرون. أقيموا الصلاة.